We've got a schedule drop. We have a quarterback controversy. We also have a coaching search going on, and we do it all with Chase Glasser of Spartans Illustrated. Let's go.
You are Locked On Spartans, your daily podcast on the Michigan State Spartans, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word for $20 off of your first purchase. Spartan friends, Spartan family, Locked On Spartans listeners, thank you so much for letting us just vault you into the weekend here at Locked On Spartans. I'm your host, Matt Sheehan, and well, just like almost every single week here, we have Chase Glasser of Spartans Illustrated on to join us. Now, I'm not going to start here by asking, hey, Chase, how you doing? Like, who is doing okay these days, no matter what side of the aisle you're on?
Matt, I'm in your walls. I'm watching you sleep. I have taken my vast network of saboteurs. You are being gang stalked. You're a targeted individual, and we are monitoring your every move.
Perfect. Just like I suspected the last few weeks here. But look, we have a loaded show today. Just like we were talking before we recorded, this is the most entertaining what might be a 2-10 season of all time here because, hey, we got some schedule news. We have a quarterback controversy in the month of November, like every program wants to have. And then, well, of course, I'm going to pick your brain about this coaching search because, look, despite the fact that Urban Meyer just bought a house in Hazlitt earlier today, we'll just act like that didn't happen and then talk about other candidates. But first, Chase, again, for people that don't know this, Chase is our favorite Walmart Wolverine with an actual Michigan degree. Like he's actually gone there. So it's been a while since we've had you on. So just like a stern parent watching their teenager come in 2.5 hours after curfew. Chase, I'm shaking my head. What have you got to say for yourself? What you scumbag, you? How could you do this?
So I'm sure we're going to be talking about the Michigan State football game, which I'm sure is the biggest football story.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I mean, so there's a lot, right? I mean, as far as the impact of it, I think the idea that this had no impact on the game, that's not true.
Right.
No, it's I mean, and it's framed not completely unfairly as, okay, you're learning legal information illegally. Sure. You would think that probably increases the efficacy of what they knew and when they knew it. I talked to a couple people just picking their brain, coaching types about this. And the broad sense that I got is that they couldn't know every play just because it's not, you have 40 seconds, which operationally means or like 30 seconds to identify a sign, to make sure that you have that coded right, and then to get a check into your defense and have that communicated. You really can't do that for every play operationally, but you certainly can focus your actions into high leverage situations, or you can take that and mix it with tells that you've picked up from alignment and things like that, personnel, to get a pretty good idea of what's going on. As far as the fallout of this, I'm really interested to see what's happening. Because at the time of recording at 5:00 Eastern, there's going to be a meeting with Tony Petitti and the athletic directors. The NCAA, when they come, with their ruling on this in 2025.
Correct. Right.
That's one entity. On Tuesday, the College Football Playoff Committee basically abdicated all responsibility and said this is an NCAA matter. Right. So then the question becomes, what does the Big Ten do? And it's really interesting. So much of the parlance of this is couched in legal terms of due process. Well, they're going to look through all the computers. Well, that's interesting because certain individuals don't have subpoena powers. We're dealing with the way institutions work. They set up these quasi-legal kind of kangaroo courts and then enforce the rules that they have written. It's not this. We're not talking about an appellate court, I think, that is interested in intellectual histories of legislative histories of certain bylaws. So I don't know. It's going to be really interesting. I would find it hard to believe that the Big Ten will ban Michigan from competing in the conference title game. And I mean, you could be very cynical and talk about they want to keep the intrigue of the Ohio State game and the
title game.
but also I find it hard to believe they would come down with something definitive while everything is still alleged and Michigan does not have a notice of allegations. What I would bet they do is, just because there is that report of a pretty substantial pressure, they would announce some sort of a parallel investigation. Now, are they going to get that wrapped up in the next 22, 23 days before Michigan plays Ohio State? I wouldn't think.
Probably not. Yeah.
And then it's, where is all this going? I mean, Connor Stallions is getting show caused. I think that's a foregone conclusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting just looking at the adjudication of this. It's probably a level 2, and then a series of level 2s can get kind of upgraded to a level 1 is my understanding. I would not be surprised to see a bowl ban in the future. The NCAA normally does not vacate wins unless there's an ineligible player on the team. And they've moved away from that a little bit. I mean, they reinstated Joe Paterno's win, so it'll be interesting to see what they do with that.
Yeah.
But the head coach has presumptive knowledge, and in that bylaw, unless the head coach can prove that they are fostering an atmosphere of compliance and taking steps to mitigate this, the head coach can get hit with the same show cause, the same penalty that the offending staffer in this case will almost certainly get hit with. So I wouldn't be shocked to see Harbaugh show caused, but I don't think that'll happen for a couple of years. And I've long been of the thought that he's not going to be here after this year anyway. And I don't think that this new contract is an accident. I would not be surprised if there's more language in there that makes it easier for Michigan to part ways with them.
Sure.
The corollary, or I guess the opposite side of that, is that Michigan could already fire him for cause if they wanted to, because of the level 2 violations and then the level 1 violation stemming out of the recruiting investigation. So they'd be able to fire him for cause if they wanted to. And I would, if it came down to it, if I'm God willing, athletic director Joe Parker in 2025, and they say, listen, if you basically give us Harbaugh, we're going to let you keep the wins and not vacate the wins, I'd take that. Because
of course you would. Yeah.
I don't think he's coaching until he's 65 here, and this is really the shot that they have to do it. So it's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. I'm sure we can come back to this next week and talk about just how wrong I am about all of this, and go over what new and sordid details have come out by then. But it's been a time.
But by the time people listen to this, everything could have possibly changed, because there's been a real knack of a lot of these stories being published by Pete Thamel at like midnight. Like, I mean, we can drop one of these at 3 p.m. Eastern time just once, I would think. But, so
it'd be nice, right? Yeah.
We'll see how different things are by the time people actually wake up and listen to this. Or heck, just like you said, we're recording at 4:30. In less than a half hour, these athletic directors are going to be on the phone with Tony Petitti right now. And look, I've sounded off on this topic time and time again. I mean, here and there, we like to sprinkle in a segment of this because, well, it's just fun to talk about. And two, some of it is literally on MSU's home turf as well. Right. Oh my God, who's the Chippewa polo over there? He looks a little familiar, but yeah. One thing though that I did not sound off on yet, and look, say what you will about Tony Petitti, like, they're slow to act. He's been a little too quiet, this and that. I want to emphasize just how bad I feel for this guy. I mean, this guy took over for Kevin Warren, who did a solid job, growing the conference, but he left a lot of ties just loose, just blowing in the wind out there with the TV deals. And hey, Tony, here's a mess to clean up. And then, here you go. It's the second or maybe even first biggest brand that you have in your own conference. Everyone hates them. Everyone's very mad at them, but they're also your best shot to win a national title. And they are a ratings bonanza here. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to show favoritism? Are you not? Like, what a paradox that our friend, Mr. Tony Petitti, is in right now. I don't envy him.
No, he's been balanced a lot of
it's a lot of plates,
different plates in the air. Inshallah, the blue wall will come through, and the COO of Fox Sports, I think, is an alum. So we'll pull for some good old fashioned complete scumbaggery and try to skate. But when I'm married with kids, when this finally gets resolved and however many years it takes, we'll be able to kind of unpack all of it. But yeah, I mean, there's a reason that Tony Petitti makes a salary that has enough zeros on it that I can't really fully comprehend.
Bingo.
Like, so I don't feel too bad for him, but it is going to be fascinating to see how the internal politics of this are dealt with within the next hour.
No kidding. Right. Well, that was fun. Well, I'm glad we got the Michigan side of things. Hey, we play things fair here, kind of, somewhat, whenever we feel like it on Locked On Spartans here. But we're actually going to get to the bulk of, the Michigan State stuff, the schedule, all that fun stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, we had to let our Wolverine surrogate, get on here and say his piece as well. Because, again, we're fair when we want to be. But first, need to talk your ear off about Game Time. Sorry, Chase, had to send you to the bench right there. The Game Time app, the world's greatest ticketing app out there for just a list of reasons, really. One, they make it super easy to get the tickets sent straight to your phone. Everyone's been outside of Spartan Stadium where there is no service, or outside of Little Caesars Arena or Comerica Park, or there's no service. Okay, when you buy your tickets on Game Time, bang, they are just zapped right to your phone. So easy to pull them up when you scan in. Also, let's talk about the last minute deals, the flash deals, and also, well, if you're going to go to the game this Saturday, tickets right now as they stand, and we're talking like great seats, are like $20 or less. That's going to get even better just minutes before kickoff. So when you walk to Spartan Stadium this Saturday, just open up the Game Time app, find a great pair of seats, and save. It is truly the best, and not just for sports, but also concerts, theatrical performances. Whatever there's a ticket to, find it on Game Time. And also save yourself some money. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege. That's all one word for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Also, for the rest of football season, for this basketball season, or just life in general, if you want to look the best, homefieldapparel.com is where you need to be. You've heard me talk up and down about Home Field Apparel really every single week this season because they have the most comfortable shirts, sweatshirts, long sleeve t-shirts, hoodies, and hey, even their hats are awesome too. I have a very weird shaped head. I'm very peculiar about the hats that I wear, and Home Field actually delivers a very nice hat for all shaped heads. So thank you, Home Field Apparel. And you know the drill with Home Field. It's a lot of vintage logos and many that you've never even seen in your entire life. And if you don't believe me, again, just hop on homefieldapparel.com and check it out for yourself. And as good as you look in your vintage apparel, again, you're going to feel just as good because it is like an angel hugging you every time you wear Home Field Apparel. So when you make your order at homefieldapparel.com, smash in promo code LOS23 for 15% off of your first order. Again, that is promo code LOS23 for 15% off at homefieldapparel.com. Let's drag Chase Glasser back onto the show here after just eviscerating him in that first segment, just making him atone for the sins of his Michigan Wolverines over there. But look, hey, there's been some exciting scheduling news here.
Yeah.
It dropped. We knew the opponents going into it, but now we actually know the weeks here. And there's a few interesting wrinkles here, like, hey, 2 bye weeks in the same season. But Chase, if you will, I'll just go down this list right now. Most people already know the schedule, but if you don't, find a pen, a legal pad, and scribble all this down. Now, it's Florida Atlantic in week 1 at home, and then at Maryland week 2. Great, some more September Terrapins. I'm sure Tualia Tagovailoa will still be a quarterback there for an 18th season. I digress. Home against Louisiana week 3, at Boston College week 4, and then here's a fun little stretch coming up here. Home against Ohio State, at Oregon in week 6, then your bye week. Then Iowa at home, and then at Michigan in week 9. Indiana at home in week 10, and then, hey, there's your other bye week. The 2 bye weeks separated by 4 weeks to end the season at Illinois, home against Purdue, home against Rutgers. So, a few notes here. No Friday night games. There are a few Big Ten teams that are playing Friday night games. Michigan State is not one of them for this season. And again, 2 bye weeks that are 4 weeks apart. 4 conference road games, Maryland, Oregon, Michigan, and Illinois. And the 5 home conference games, Ohio State, Iowa, Indiana, Purdue, and Rutgers. I got to say, Chase, I mean, look, with all these teams coming into the conference, especially the USCs, the Washingtons, and the Oregons of the world, you're never going to get a season where you just completely have a clean slate and you're thinking, oh my God, we lucked out. But all things considered, yeah, you do have that 4-game stretch of Ohio State, Oregon, Michigan, and Iowa. But you could do a lot worse, I think. I mean, Absolutely. So for a new incoming coach, we'll take, especially how that season ends too. I mean, let's just hope that the team next year is not in complete tatters going into November like ours is this year. But yeah, bye week at Illinois and then back-to-back home games against Purdue and Rutgers. You can you could throw an exclamation point and, like, I don't know, let's call it a
Absolutely.
7-5 season, 8-4 season. So, I don't know, any instant reaction when you saw the Michigan State schedule drop?
My first one is, I mean, I think it shapes up pretty well. You have a fairly light start. I mean, you got to go to
Yeah.
Boston College. I mean, an out of conference road game is that's always something. But I mean, I don't predict any substantial trouble there. September Maryland, that's a thing. I mean, other than that, the first kind of segment of that schedule looks pretty reasonable.
Yeah.
And then that 4-game gauntlet of versus Ohio State at Oregon. What an atmosphere that'll be out at Autzen versus Iowa and at Michigan. That's tough. But that end of the season, I mean, you're going to take some lumps in the middle of the season, and if you're on the brink for bowl eligibility or something like that, you can really, I think, make a statement there at the end of the season and turn it around and really have some positive momentum going into the bowl game and into that first full recruiting cycle that the new coach will have.
Yeah.
So all things considered, I don't think it shapes up poorly at all. I think it's just a fine schedule. Yeah.
It's not lost with me how ridiculous it sounds, to be a host of a show talking about a team that is well on their way to anywhere between a 2-10 season or a 4-8 season at best. But like at Boston, just like you said, like at Boston College, like that's your non-conference road game. Like we can do a lot worse than that. Like, okay, chalk it up in the win column here. But yeah, there's no escaping like a tough schedule eventually, but it's just that 4-game stretch in the middle there. But yeah, I mean, no real other notes. Another late October game against Michigan. This one's going to be at the Big House, of course, because that's the one protected rivalry, as many of us know. So you will see Michigan on the schedule every single year. But yeah, so that kind of just puts a bow in it for scheduling. I mean, the hot take is that, hey, for first-year head coach,
Not bad.
you could be looking at like a 7-5, 8-4 season, dare I say. But again, there's a lot to be shuffled out here when it comes to the roster, transfers, this and that. But hey.
But if you're an West Coast alumni, I mean, what an opportunity to go see a team play.
Totally.
In Autzen, that's a great environment. Or there's worse places to be for a weekend than Boston in early fall, late summer. I mean, that's awesome. Go do that. Book those tickets and have a fun trip. You get a little older, out of college a bit, get some discretionary income. That's one of the great things about post-grad life is being able to go to road games and have those great experiences. I mean, if things work out, I will be at every Michigan game for the rest of the season here. So it's,
Gotcha.
it's being able to do that. That's fun. And Boston, Autzen, I mean, those are great venues and fun places to be. So absolutely. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, was blessed enough to go to the Arizona State game when it was in Tempe. And even though things went terrible for Michigan State, like that is one of the most fun trips I've ever had. Like following a team or not following a team. Like it was a great time. And then like you get the whole sense of community. There's nothing like invading a stadium, or even if it's, not the entire state. Like there's nothing like rolling with your group to enemy territory. Like for the Miami game, my God, that was a blast. But yeah, just.
It was a lot of fun in East Lansing a couple of weeks ago. It was certainly
more
fun than the time before that when I was in East Lansing. That was not fun. So those things can happen, but if you don't let your opponent's running back go for 5 touchdowns on your head, then these things happen. So
I appreciate you at least mentioning that game. That's very nice of you. That's the least you could do. But again, you know what? The schedule is one thing. What the roster will be next year is a completely different thing. And let's talk about a big position here that may or may not be stable by next season. Is this quarterback battle? Because we saw Katin Houser, we saw Sam Leavitt coming late in the game on Saturday. And there's a few different ways we could look at this. Now, the first way that we will is just the easiest way as a talking head show host. Who do you ride out the next 4 games here? And I do understand that, look, it could be very likely that Sam Leavitt will play his last game of the year coming up because this will be his 4th game. For those that don't know, you can play 4 games and then maintain eligibility. So like this could be it for Sam Leavitt, but let's just say in a perfect world here, Chase, where these guys can play until they can't play anymore. Who do you ride out the rest of the season between the two?
Not factoring in, it's an interesting dilemma because normally when you have this kind of dichotomy, you have a veteran quarterback that's done a lot for the program, and then young up and comer. When you have a lost season like this, like let's say we were talking about Peyton Thorne and Katin Houser, or Peyton Thorne and Sam Leavitt. Well, I'd tell you right now, go with the young guy, redshirt be damned, and you appreciate everything that your veteran quarterback's done for the program, but we're looking towards the future here and building towards the future and trying to grow somebody. If you feel that your young guy can handle that, ride out the young guy. But we have the dilemma of 2 young quarterbacks.
Right.
And I don't
Small
know
problem.
how often you see that with, at this point, 2 young quarterbacks that have what they've shown. It's an interesting dilemma. I mean, it kind of depends on what Harlan Barnett's task has been. If he's at this point, you're not making a bowl, he's certainly not getting the job.
Mhm.
What is it that you're trying to accomplish? Because I would be really recalcitrant to burn Leavitt's red shirt.
Yeah, right.
Leavitt, his arm strength is palpable. I mean, it's really good.
Yeah.
In a way that Katin's may not be. I think Houser has a bit more command of the offense. A little bit. I think he gets through his reads a little bit better. But I mean, physically, I think Leavitt's probably got Houser by a nose. But I know, disregarding the red shirt, you don't want to. I'd have to know more about the internal dynamics of the team, because you don't want to middle finger your young guy who's kind of the next in line, who you threw out in some tough situations with Houser. But
correct.
At the same time, what you have in Leavitt looks extremely appealing. And then there's the idea that, well, none of these coaches are going to be here next year, and a lot of their teammates may not be either. So what are you really doing? I think you have to preserve that red shirt, but that's if Leavitt has not made it known internally that, hey, I'm transferring after this. So I think it's a hard thing to determine, just because you need to know so much about the internal machinations of what's going on in the football building. But I mean, just talking about Sam Leavitt, the physical profile is substantial, and he looks really impressive from a physical perspective. The mental part will come. The stat line, as far as the touchdown to interception ratio, I mean, he wasn't helped. The interception against Michigan was largely not his fault. He threw a bad pick against Minnesota. When you're running too high and you're trying to get it in that turkey hole, you can't do that. That's a savvy move by the corner. That ball cannot be thrown flat. You gotta, if that's not open, kind of from a lateral perspective, you need to put some air on that. But that's a young quarterback making mistakes.
Of course.
Right. So I'm not concerned about that in the slightest. But I guess to answer your question, it just kind of depends on what are you trying to do? And that's a tough question to answer, because we're not in there. We don't know. But for a team in this much turmoil, with coaching change and transfers and all those things coming up, to have the luxury of having 2 fairly highly rated, high profile young guys, where you'd think at least one of them will stick around, there's worse places to be in.
No doubt. And I got one more question about the Houser and Leavitt situation, because there are some people out there being like, well, the game was called a little different for Leavitt than it was Houser. So we'll just pick your brain on that here in a hot segment. First, Chase, I hate to do this to you again. I got to send you to the bench, because I need to talk to people's ears off about PrizePicks, the leader in daily fantasy sports. Gang, look, you could just multiply your money times 25 in just under a minute. And let me show you how that's done here. What PrizePicks is, you can pick some NBA players, NHL players, NFL players. Well, you used to be able to do MLB players until the Rangers put a stop to the baseball season, but you can do all one sport. You can mix and match sports. You take the player, you look at their projected stats that PrizePicks give you, and you got to guess higher or lower than that. String enough together, you can multiply your money by 25. I mean, I just sit down and I make my PrizePicks in roughly 42 seconds most nights, and I stay glued to the couch to watch games that, quite frankly, I would not care about otherwise. So yes, spice up the football season, spice up the basketball season, the hockey season, or all those combined. Again, you can mix and match your PrizePicks sheet here. Go to PrizePicks.com, because they want to get you winning early. Go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, go to PrizePicks.com/LockedOnCollege and use code LockedOnCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. It's PrizePicks, the daily fantasy sports leader that makes it easy. All right, let's get Chase back into the mix here. And when it does come to the quarterback situation too, I just have to mention this, like 10 or 15 years ago, MSU is like in not a bad situation. Okay, like transfer portal isn't a thing. We got 2 young gun quarterbacks. They're definitely going to stay in the offseason. They're 100% going to duke it out in the spring and then the fall, and then the other guy's just going to be the backup. But that's not reality anymore, Chase. Like, that's like we could very well see both these guys walk in the offseason. Who's to say? I don't know.
Yeah, it's like one of those early NCAA football games where you can just stack 5 stars on your bench.
Oh God, yeah.
Fine, you know, you're always going to have a redshirt junior 5-star.
Yeah, life is good, baby. It's sweet, but no, life is not good. Life is actually horrible here. And we live in these trying times. So let's talk about how the game was called for both, because I don't necessarily agree with it, but I saw some fans out there saying like, oh, the game was called more vertical is one thing that I kept hearing, like more vertical for Sam Leavitt. He had more opportunities to go downfield more. I didn't necessarily see it that way, but I'm excited to hear what you have to think about that, because it was different situations of the game, of course. You know, Michigan State playing from behind when Leavitt takes over, as opposed to trying to establish the run and keep things more lateral in the beginning of the game. But I think that Houser did still have his fair amount of shots he could take downfield. I'll stop blabbing. What? Yeah.
I mean, Jay Johnson, to his detriment, I think his route concepts and just what they run is largely it's good at putting people in one-on-one situations. But if you don't have guys who are going to win those one-on-ones, it's not going to work well.
Keon Coleman's not there anymore. Right. Jaden Reed ain't walking through that door. That is an issue.
Mm-hmm. Right? So when talking about the passing game, I don't think it's fair to say the concepts changed when Houser left the game and Leavitt came in. Houser had a long completion to, I believe, Montori Foster in the first half. Mm-hmm. That was 20 yards in the air, something like that. And those shots are there. Like, just the way Michigan State calls their offense, they're not running long handoff West Coast stuff. Now, it may be that Houser is coached that, hey, listen, if your first read is there, you don't come off that. And your first read is going to be something in the curl flat, something short, probably something just a sit route, a hook, a curl, something like that. Yeah. I don't think that's bad coaching, because I've been on record for almost a month now talking about I don't trust his arm strength at this point, right? So I'd rather not have him float a ball to a safety and have it picked off. Leavitt, I mean, the drive route that he threw against Michigan to Parachek, the tight end at the sticks, good catch. Really good throw on a line, low, hard. I have not seen that from Houser, right?
Okay.
Houser threw a couple of good touchdown passes in the middle of the field against Rutgers. One of which was in a really tight window, in between a linebacker and safety. I mean, that is a great throw. I still don't think it was necessarily driven, but this isn't Madden, right? Like, there's more than just, his arm strength is 99, let's ride. So I would disagree that it's called more vertically. I saw that as well. I don't agree with that. However, the way the concepts are executed, there may be coaching there, but to the extent there is, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea if he's told to kind of keep a lid on it, based on what I've seen from him. I mean, you could also say, and I wouldn't disagree with you, damn the torpedoes, we're going to chuck it, because I'd have no problem with the all PI Ricky White offense, right? Like, that's
why not? Right.
And also, to that point, that worked. Michigan State kicked a field goal, I believe, on a drive where there was a long pass to I think John Glover, who drew a good PI call. Maybe it was Foster, but that exists, that happens. And I'm not overly enamored with the wide receiver group. I think they're fine, but I have many issues with the offense. The lack of verticality for Katin Houser is not really one of the things that I have an issue with.
I echoed a lot of that too in the post game too. It's like, unfortunately, some of your best offense in the first half was the pass interference, and I think Gates had one for sure. And then
that's what I was thinking. I think
Glover but Minnesota, I think, just three flags that game. But yeah, 2 of them were nice plays for Michigan State. So hang on to the good times, I guess. It's
right.
4 more games of this stuff until Urban Meyer checks in. Urban Meyer, I've heard from some people have said it's a 0% chance of happening. I've heard that like, hey, we are skyrocketing to like an announcement being made by middle of next week. Like we are all over the map here.
Right.
We did the Urban Meyer conversation not too long ago, but let's just hypothetically speaking here, let's say that his house purchase in Okemos doesn't go through and he doesn't take the job or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Jason, I'm interested to hear like other candidates, who's at the top of your list, because right now I got one eye on Mike Elko, I got the other one on Lance Leopold, and then I got a third eye out of the middle of my forehead that's looking at Jonathan Smith here. Is it any of those three guys that you think would be a great instant fit for Michigan State if it's not Urban Meyer, or is there a name off the wall that you want to throw out there?
Well, I think all those fit, right? I mean, Elko has done darn well at basketball for school, a school with some institutional limitations, perhaps that he's done quite well in. Defensive guy, but I generally favor an offensive head coach, just because you still have a consistent theme of, okay, this is what we have, a coherent offensive scheme that will mesh in some part with the offensive coordinator that I hire. Urban Meyer is a good example of that. At some level what you're going to get. Jim Harbaugh at Michigan, we are going to run the hell out of the ball, right? Like you have that diversity of run concept. I'm always fine with that, but that's not in any way something that is a deal breaker. So Elko, really good defensive guy, good track record. I think he would do a good job. You mentioned Jonathan Smith, offensive guy, Oregon State. If you can pry him from there, I don't believe he's necessarily a Midwestern guy, but in the new kind of era of college football and with the kind of economic realities of the Rust Belt, I don't think that's as big of a deal. He's done a really good job building a team that was mired in a pretty steep malaise for a while. So that's impressive, right? And then who is the third one you mentioned?
Lance Leopold out of Kansas, who just downed Oklahoma.
The only thing with him is I don't think he's going to be long for coaching. I think he's 59.
Right. Yes.
That said, good golly, I love his offense. Just the way that it's kind of a pseudo triple. It's kind of the rational extension of what like Michigan and Georgia have done. This kind of innovation by regression, in which, okay, everybody's saying we play defense out of the nickel now, and we need these super small linebackers to play spread teams. So what are we going to do? We're going to get bigger. We're going to get burlier. We're going to shove 3 tight ends there and run duo and ISO and trap just down your throat. This is the rational extension of that, and I think that he'll have better athletes at Michigan State than he has at Kansas. Now, are you comfortable with him coming for 4 years and then retiring? If he can set, will he come in and set?
I am.
Yeah, I mean, can you get a good offensive coordinator under him? That's kind of the head coach in waiting. I would have no opposition to that. I think he'd do a fantastic job. Would he leave? I don't know. But that's certainly a name. Jake Dickert has been bandied around a bit from Washington State. I think he would be fine. I don't think he's going to be groundbreaking, but I think he'll be fine. He did a good job taking over a Washington State team who's, I believe their coach got fired because of a vaccine issue.
Yes, good times. Rolovich, I think it was his name.
Yeah, and a number of his staff left as well. So he came in and has done a fine job. I don't necessarily think he's at the caliber, but he's an offensive guy. Good energy. He's young. I believe he's 40. So that's interesting there. And then there's 2 more names that I would throw out as well. First one, Mark Stoops. He gets thrown around every team that opens up in the Midwest. I know when there was a lot of buzz for him in Michigan circles, when it was looking like that was gonna maybe happen a couple of years ago, and who knows, we may be having a conversation this offseason. But I mean, he's done a really good job at Kentucky. You look at Kentucky, I mean, they're the 8th biggest brand in the SEC from a football perspective, and he's gotten them not over the hump, but he's done quite well. And Michigan State's a better football brand than Kentucky, full stop. A defensive guy, but I think he would do a good job. And then someone else who I've been a fan of for a while is Jeff Traylor at UTSA. Guy, not a Midwestern guy, but he's young. I really like his offense. He's done a good job at UTSA. That'd be someone who I'd be interested in. I really don't think, I know people have talked about Ryan Grubb from Washington. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. I really like his designs. However, there's a blueprint out there for him to get locked up, right? But Arizona State did it just a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And I have not really seen him. Kalen DeBoer, they inherited very, very good wide receivers. Kalen DeBoer has not necessarily recruited extremely well. Michael Penix is a very good quarterback. He's also very veteran. I'd want to see a little bit more, but I really want someone who has dealt with leading a team before. I don't want a first-time head coach here. I really don't. Just because that's you have a lot of different things to deal with here. You've got the fallout of the Mel Tucker thing. You've got the advent of NIL. You have a new conference with a lot of expansion going on. I think you want someone who is a steady hand who's led a program before. So that's kind of who I'm thinking. I think Michigan State will get a fine coach and be just fine coming out of this. I think there's a lot of people who could do well. I wouldn't necessarily be overly enamored with like a Jason Candle. He's done fine at Toledo, but he frankly should have probably done more. So we'll see. It's my sense is I don't really do the insider stuff, but that everything is being kept extremely close to the vest, and
Very.
A lot of different ways to take that, and I'm not really going to get into. But I don't know really anything in particular, but I think they'll be able to get a good name. This is still a good brand. It's a great school. There's a lot of institutional support. And I'm confident that they'll be able to get somebody just fine. And if you look at what Haller did with hockey, for example, I mean, that's a
Sure.
hire. That is a fantastic hire. So, we'll see. It'll be interesting to see kind of how it all shakes out. But I'm quite sanguine with the fact that they'll get a good coach.
Let's go into the weekend with this because, hey, there's a name out there. He's available. And Chase, you said you don't want a guy that's being a head coach for the first time. And, hey, maybe some Midwest roots, if that sweetens the pot for anyone. And, well, if age is going to be an issue here, may I introduce you to the 47-year-old former head coach of your Las Vegas Raiders, Josh McDaniels. He is on the market, baby. Woo! He was a grad assistant here about.
I was going to say he was a GA.
Yeah. He was a GA in 1999. Wikipedia tells me.
Mm-hmm.
So, some Josh McDaniels sizzle for you, right?
Yeah.
Who'd you rather have, Josh McDaniels or Jason Candle? Because I think I'll still go with Candle. I think.
Yeah. Well, I mean, just not being a college coach before, there's a lot. I mean, with the also, everybody, from what I understand, in Las Vegas hated McDaniels.
Correct. Yep. Small problem. Yeah. Not a likable guy at all.
No, the Patriot coaching tree just completely not having anybody functional except for Mike Vrabel, who was famously not a coach for Belichick, has been very interesting.
It's nuts.
It's funny how that works.
We'll get him after Trisha then. You know what?
Yes,
We'll just
of course,
I think it's because people haven't combined enough Belichick coaches onto one staff to make it work. I think that's where we go right there. All right, now I'm just spiraling here. All right, gang, this has been a great time. Again, Chase Glasser, Spartans Illustrated. Go subscribe to the great work from all the folks at Spartans Illustrated. And anything you want to leave us with as we head into the weekend, Chase, or just a hearty go green.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, no, I had some remark about the sign stealing thing, but no, I don't have a leg to stand on. It'll be a good weekend of college football. I think it's strange that this is senior day for the guys.
Yeah.
But we'll see kind of how she all shakes out, and I'm sure we'll have some good stuff to talk about next week.
You know what? And we will be back on Saturday to recap the game, and also, hey, get ourselves ready for an actual real-life basketball game that actually counts against James Madison. I don't know what their mascot, the Fighting James is. I don't know. Who cares? But we are going to preview that. We're going to talk all things Michigan State football, basketball the next time we see you Saturday night. But until then, love you all. Go Green.